Hello, this is Silas. I'm back with Stephen, and this is I Know Great People, which is a series of talks that we're doing. And thank you for participating, both the people who are here, Stephen and Jaclynn. She's going to introduce herself soon. This is a series where my general intention behind this is to share information about what we think people do versus what they actually do. And I want to bridge the gap between perception and knowledge because I believe that the more we know about ourselves, the greater the things we can accomplish. And ourselves are not just who we are, but who we know and the things that are around us, the things that we use, the things that we do. And I think in the information age, we can take it from there and then go to the age of understanding. And with this, there's a couple of questions in this questionnaire. You'll be able to find links somewhere where you're listening to this to the questionnaire so you can check it out and see about participating in it later. The first one I did was with my good friend Stephen, who we've done several talks with, and you can check that out already. This is going to be the second one going. And I think without further ado, you got anything to say to the people, Stephen?
No, just hello. I hope everyone's well. Today I wanted to bring on my good friend Jaclynn here to talk a bit about her career in she's pursuing her PhD, but also teaching. So Jaclynn, if you just want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing currently, where you're from, etc.
Yeah.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Thank you guys so much we're all in different parts of the world. So being so flexible, especially Silas, being so flexible with our time to be able to meet up with me. My name is Jaclynn. I am originally from a very small rural town in Hawaii that you've probably never heard of, called Ke'au. Very small dirt roads, tiny place. And I have been lucky enough to live an expat life for the past 12 or 13 years. And most of that time has been spent in Asia. I'm currently based in Taipei, Taiwan. And I am pursuing a PhD, never ending. PhD about halfway through, fingers crossed. And I'm also a university lecturer. Prior to teaching in university, I was teaching in international high schools. I was in a Canadian program. I did refuse to add "use" to words like color and favorite. So I was a rebel. But I am teaching at a university now, hoping to continue that going forward. That's my goal, in academia and everything. So, yeah, from Hawaii, living in Taiwan, traveling all over the world before COVID happened.
Yeah.
My little summary.
Jaclynn has done a lot of traveling, by the way. I'm always envious looking at her pictures just like from everywhere. So maybe that could probably be a whole conversation in of itself, but I'm always impressed at all this stuff you're posting.
So how exactly is it for you to know each other? Because with this, I know great people. There's different ways of knowing people. And as Jaclynn mentioned, Stephen is in New York City right now. She's in Taipei, Taiwan. I'm in Nairobi, Kenya. So, and we just found out before this that there's somebody actually made Jaclynn know from back in Rome. So that's just the small world that it is. But then what does it mean to know somebody? So just how do you two know each other?
So I think originally you followed me on Instagram because you like certain things that I post. Like we like James Lindsay, we liked Colin Wright, a few other people. Then we talked a bit back and forth. Of course, I follow and repost your stuff as well. I also added Jaclynn to a group chat. She's made some other friends through that. And, we've just talked back and forth. I added her on Facebook too. So I'm trying to think of when this was. What was this, last year? I'm trying to remember. I don't remember the exact timing of it, but
I think it's been at least a year, and we talk a bit online. I feel like we speak quite a bit and share a lot of thoughts, and we have a lot of similar views on a lot of things. So, yeah.
She got James Lindsay to respond to her. He wouldn't respond to me.
My social media is private, but whenever I share and tag something by James Lindsay or Colin Wright or Megan Murphy, I make it public because I know they're going to reshare it. And I always meet the most interesting people, from those reshares. It's, they're being nice. I'm buying their book or I'm sharing something about them. And it's just cool. Social media, you can meet people, interesting people. You can meet people like James Lindsay that I really admire, and you can actually have conversations with them. So it's one of the benefits, maybe one of the few benefits of social media.
That is the thing. That's one thing about social media is people would say, people will go and they say, okay, you're getting in echo chambers or you're getting these groups, but social media is just a tool. It's social media. You can be as social as you want to. You can be a different person. You can create many sock puppet accounts and be like all sorts of different people, or you can just actually use it for what it is, socializing, and actually go out there and meet a whole bunch of people. Like I personally have met quite a few people through social media. Even Stephen, our first connection was through social media. Then we met in person when we were still living in New York. So this might be a thing where eventually we might meet somewhere in between. Where's equidistant between Taipei, New York, and Nairobi?
Oh, wait. You guys can come to Taiwan. It's equally, totally inconvenient for both of you. So you can come to Taiwan.
You should do something in Hawaii and we'll go to that. I think that's a good idea.
Oh, yeah. Hawaii's in bad shape right now. They definitely don't want any visitors, unfortunately. It's really bad there right now. But yeah, that'd be amazing. I guess maybe equally far away for us, maybe like Scandinavia. What would be?
In the Middle East, maybe like Doha. I don't know. I don't know where. But Asia is definitely somewhere I would like to go. I've been to some places in Europe, of course, here in Kenya, in the United States of America, but not yet to Asia. Yeah. So anything else you want to say just in general about what would you call the title of what you're doing? So it's just being in education, both learning in Taiwan and also in Taipei and also teaching. Are you teaching at an American school? Is it an American system or is it?
No. Well, actually, that's a very interesting question. It's a Taiwanese university who received their, actually, I did my master's degree there. So anybody who knows me will know what university is. But I actually left the U.S. because I got into a master's program that was just outrageously expensive. And I thought, I want to travel. I want to see the world. If I do this program, I'm going to be in debt. I'll have to immediately go to work full time and work until I die to pay this off. So I wanted to move abroad for work opportunities, but also to pursue my master's. So there was a university here in Taipei that is American accredited. It's an entirely American curriculum. Everything aligns with the U.S. system. So that is actually where I'm teaching, and it's the same university, different campus that I actually got my master's degree from.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it is. I think it's Asia's first American accredited university.
Wow. Okay. So, do you mind telling us what you mastered in?
Sure. Mastered in, sure. I am a master of international relations and global governance.
Okay.
I believe that after I graduated a few years later, they changed the title of that program, but that was the name when I was there. And the focus for my thesis was on feminist movements in the Middle East. And I focused primarily on Iran, but a big interest for me. And it'll also be a part of my doctoral thesis eventually, when I get there eventually. But it's sort of a continuation of what I was doing for my master's.
Could we pencil you in to come back for a conversation, or once that's done? Because that seems like a very.
Of course. I'll see you in 10 years. I'll see you in 10 years. Well, maybe 3 if I'm lucky. Yeah.
Maybe that's when we can do it in person. We'll come to Taiwan for the celebration.
Well, I'll be in Europe. My university, I've switched doctoral programs, but my university is in Europe, so that might be easier. We could just meet there.
Any other questions, Stephen? First part.
I was going to ask, any particular reasons you chose these majors? It was just a subject you were interested in, or was there any impetus?
For my undergraduate degree, I studied history and sociology, and that was purely because I love those subjects. Really no thought about what to do in the future, which is good because I've never really used those degrees. They haven't really come in handy, but it's my passion. History is really my passion. For my master's, it was limited. I'm in Taiwan, and there aren't a lot of English language degree programs. Most of them, once you get to the master's level, are in business, international business. And so, there's a lot of great universities, perhaps even better universities, but all they offered in English was business, which I have no interest in. And I knew with international relations, I could really take it anywhere, right? I mean, I could do anything I wanted with that. And I knew that I could focus on feminist theory. I could talk about the Middle East. I could delve in and do my own research, and it would fit this sort of vague international relations, politics, philosophy course. So yeah, I mean, it was really just that's available. It's in English. It's American accredited. I'm getting an American degree, and I have the flexibility to study what I wanted. So, and I could afford it. Paid it out of pocket.
Cool.
That's one thing that I was going to ask, because quite often people are saying, okay, I'm following my passion, and it's a cliche, but when people normally do that, they throw out the whole monetary cost benefit analysis that goes with that. It's really admirable that you actually, that's something you even mentioned before, saying that you were like, okay, there's a lot of debt involved in this, and all these options that people have. What made you actually, is this something in your background, how you were raised, or something that made you think, okay, actually, I need to understand that?
It is. My dad was a very never go into debt kind of guy. I mean, honestly, I think the first house that we bought as a family, I might have been maybe 8 years old. I remember before that we were renting. I think he bought it cash. Like this man was saver. This man did not believe in debt. He would buy a new car. He'd be like, I'm just paying for it. Here you go. That might be crazy. I don't know. I really don't know if that's good or bad or whatever. I mean, obviously, you know, he had a good credit score, but he just didn't believe in debt. And he sort of raised me. I saw that growing up my whole life, you know, try to avoid debt, massive amounts of debt, be smart with your money. But, you know, I'm sure you're aware of the education system in the US, that it's outrageous. I mean, it's next level crazy. It's completely insane. I mean, I would have been, I was 21 when I got my bachelor's degree. If I had done a master's, I would have been 25 and had, you know, over $100,000 of debt. I mean, that's insane to me. I mean, I was a very immature 25-year-old also. So I would never have been able to travel around the world like I have. I would never have been able to move here to Taiwan and all of these opportunities that I'm so grateful for. So, you know, I waited a few years and I just found the right fit for me, because it wasn't worth it to me to pay the amount of money. It just wasn't. It might be for other people, but yeah, for me, no.
Yeah, Silas and I did a series on a book called Cracks in the Ivory Tower. It's about the moral mess of higher education, and it gets into all the issues with the student loans, but also corruption, as far as people being pushed into classes that they don't really want to study, all the corruption as far as money, like there's all this other stuff. And I was thinking it's interesting because I went to culinary school. My debt was about $64,000, but I mean, I know people in the city here who are 200,000 or more. I had a friend, they went to a friend of a friend went to NYU Law. They were $250,000 in debt. Now the person was making good money, but just to have that hanging over your head, I can't imagine.
And see, I have a great amount of anxiety, so I'm just not the type of person that would be able to deal with that. How long is culinary school? How many years is that?
So this was only 2 years. There was also a bachelor's program, but I didn't do it. So it was 64,000. But like, I mean, even like Pratt, the art school here in Brooklyn, that's 50,000 a year, and that's 4 years. I think if you do architecture or other things, it's another year. So yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, my previous, I switched doctoral programs. I spent a few years trying to find a program that really suited my interests. Again, I'm just studying things that are interesting to me that are not particularly useful. I figure I've set a precedent at this point. I'm just going to continue doing whatever. I mean, I'm really only doing the PhD because I just really love to learn. I mean, there's no grand scheme behind it. I just really like being in school. I like being a student. So I got into a top 20 school. I got into a really, really good university. And I spent the first 2 years in extremely poor health and constant state of anxiety because of the amount of money that I was. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's insane. It's really, the amount of money that I've spent the past 2 years. So pretty happy I switched. I don't get to be really arrogant and say, I go to a top 20 school, but I also am not going to be in debt. So
yeah. There is something about that, just with the entire K through 12 system. The fact that it's called compulsory education, it tells it, it's in the name. You don't have to compel somebody to learn to actually get an education. Educations are valuable. If you're really educating somebody, people will crawl through broken glass on hands and knees to get an education, and we see people doing that. So to have to compel somebody in order to educate them, that's not education, that's indoctrination. That's what you're actually doing in that system. And that's something I think more and more people are noticing, that it's not what it's being sold as.
Yeah.
And just one more question about just the general atmosphere in Taiwan, because we've talked about how it is in the United States of America. I've talked to Stephen about how here in Kenya now I'm starting to see billboards and adverts as banks are starting to get more involved in people's lives, and now they're doing like, now the schools coming from abroad that are coming to poach Kenyan students and say, come to Australia, come to the United States of America, come to England, and we'll give you we'll give you scholarships, and then the banks will give you loans and things like that. So that system of indebting yourself in order to go get education is being exported to, I think, the developing world. Like, what is the situation in Taiwan? Like, your students that you're teaching, are most of them paying their own way? Is there some kind of state program? Is there loans? How does that normally work in the system, if you're aware at all?
Yeah. Let's see. No, it's all family based. It's all education is very, 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 very important in Taiwan and actually across Asia. It's hugely important, and it is compulsory in the sense that kids study whatever their parents tell them to study. I did a graduate program with people who were in business and wanted to be artists. And they were like, yeah, I don't have a choice. This is what my parents are telling me to study. But that's common, right? I mean, maybe that's better. Maybe people are listening in going, yeah, well, you're stupid for studying history. They're going to make money studying business, and they might have a point there. So there's the difference between the US and independence and freedom and, choosing your own way, in Asia, where you're doing it for the family. Who's to say which one's better? But for programs, for example, I was teaching in a Canadian program previously, a high school program that was fairly pricey. Nope, that's all parents. And not all of these families are wealthy, not at all. They save everything. They live very minimal lifestyles. They don't travel much to get the next generation through school and to do as much as they can for them. And then that's paid back eventually in the future when the kids take care of the elderly parents. Right? So that's the cycle there.
Well, what I was going to say on that is I used to work with some Koreans, and I was learning a bit about some of this stuff, like the idea of they call it, I forget how to say it, but it means actually child farming in Korean. And the idea is that your kid is supposed to be more successful than you, like a farmer is judged by the crops they grow. So they said, like, it's better to put your kid in a top school and be struggling than it is to be a Samsung executive with no kids. Like, that's how they see it. And the idea, and like you say, because there's so much reverence for the elders, I think it comes out of Confucianism. The idea, because your parents did all this for you, you're supposed to respect and pay it back to them.
Yeah, exactly right. Confucius, filial piety, right? It's very, very strong. Taiwan, though, is much more relaxed than I believe you would find, families and education in China or Japan or South Korea. I think it's a bit more relaxed, a bit more influence from the West. They're really pushing right now a completely bilingual country by 2030, which is completely unrealistic. It's not going to happen, but I think it's great. Bilingual meaning they speak Mandarin, Chinese here, and English. English as a second language. But no, it's not state sponsored at all. It is all paid for by parents, but the basic education system. See, like, my program was a different thing, right? I mean, it's an international program. Just to go to a high school, there's no fees. You don't pay anything. You have to buy uniforms, and you have to maybe pay some small fees, but all of that is just free. And university is not very expensive. So that's pretty easy and accessible.
Okay.
If they're staying in Taiwan,
I might check online, because now I'm taking your questions like how many universities are there, what's the competition? Because here in Kenya, there's a glut of them. It's become such an industry, but there's so many just fake ones. They just give up fake degrees and
fake ones. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I remember I first moved to Taiwan, and to get an ARC, an alien resident certificate to stay in the country, to get a job, you have to have a bachelor's degree. Okay. Most of us come here for education, and a lot of people didn't, so they would get fake degrees from China. But I don't think that's a thing anymore. I don't think I don't. That industry is still going. I think the government has caught on, and now it's a bit too hard to fake. But as far as universities in Taiwan, there are actually too many, because the population is declining quite a bit, which is a phenomenon, I guess, around Asia. But Taiwan's population is not to the extent that Japan's is. They're in big trouble. But especially for a country and a people that are so xenophobic. That's going to be interesting. That's going to be interesting how that's going to play out. Like, we don't want anyone else, but no people. Taiwan's population is on the decline, and because of COVID, students can't get in. So a lot of universities, a lot of schools are having to close or shut down programs because, there's just too many. Too many.
Oh, okay, now that you said that students get in, so now we're talking about students from other parts of Asia as well, too. There's probably a lot of them coming into Taiwan because of maybe some quality of schools or certain subjects that are not taught elsewhere?
Okay. Yeah, definitely. In my class, I have students from Indonesia, Malaysian students, Russian students. There's quite a few Russian people who come to Taiwan. Quite a few. Let's see, I think at this point there's only maybe 11 countries that have diplomatic ties to Taiwan, but a few of them are in Central America. So we have quite a few students from those countries coming in. In the past, quite a few from Belize, for example, because they have diplomatic ties to Taiwan. So, my class has a bit of diversity, which is nice, because my high school classes did not.
Well, mine was the same way. It was like my graduating high school class had 80 kids, and it was like white, middle class, upper middle class, like country
80
people.
Kids. 80 kids. Yeah. My graduating class had like 800.
Wow.
And it's Hawaii, so every color of the rainbow. But wow.
Just like this conversation, I'm somewhere in the middle there. Mine had about 425, and it was somewhat diverse. It was like 50% white, but then half of those European people were like first generation Europeans. So it was more than a 50%. I think it was about 75%. But half of those were first generation Europeans because a lot of international students in the area.
Silas, what part of the world did you go to high school in?
Bethesda, Maryland, Montgomery County. It's like right outside Washington, D.C. Yeah. So a lot of UN kids, a lot of embassy kids. Like my parents were working for the Kenya embassy, so that's why we were in the area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So any other questions about this first part?
Jaclynn, I was just going to ask, how many languages do you speak? Because I know you deal with a lot of different people. Yeah, I wondered. Yeah.
This is where I sound like a big jerk, because, and it just sounds so bad because I just speak English, and poorly at that. I understand quite a bit of Chinese. I like to downplay it, to be honest. But I definitely know when people are talking about me, and I can order food. I can, do all the basics in Chinese, but it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of time to study and learn Chinese. Like studying 1 day a week, 2 days a week, it's not going to cut it. You're not going to learn anything. And from day one, when I landed here, I have been jam-packed busy, because that's sort of how I live my life. I get depressed if I'm not busy. I like to be constantly doing things. So I'm involved in actually a lot of different things all over the board. So, and usually during holidays, except for now with COVID, I would never be here during holidays. The entire summer I'd be traveling. Chinese New Year, which is our big holiday, we get a month off. It's like a month after Christmas, which we don't get off. Traveling. I've never actually had enough downtime, never stayed long enough. I've never been not studying something else. So I'm a terrible person. I've been here a long time and I just speak the basics, but you know what? I pay taxes here. It's fine.
So Megan, or as she's also known, lipstick lesbian wife. Her mother's actually her mother's actually Taiwanese, and it was funny. She speaks fluent Mandarin, and it was funny because we worked at a sushi place, but a lot of Chinese people would come in, especially during restaurant week, and she would translate everything they were saying about us. It was pretty funny. Like she would they'd be like, "Oh, these Americans are funny. They're trying to be tan," because she got a tan, came back from the beach, and these Americans take everything literally. And then a few times she actually responded to them, and they were surprised because if you look at her, she looks like a mix, so it's like you can't tell what she is immediately. But then she would respond in perfect Mandarin, and they would just be really surprised. It's like you got to be careful though. You don't know what people understand and what people.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Especially in such a global place as New York City. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I like to do the slow stare. Like if I hear people peripherally talking about me, I like to just kind of, do the slow stare, and they're like, "Oh my god, she knows." Like I do know.
I don't know if that's a sort of self-preservation tactic, because I remember when I was young, my parents speak the tribal tongue Luya. I still can't speak it to this day, but I could for sure from when I was a kid tell when they were speaking about us. I mean, of course, part of the time they would be speaking English or Swahili, then they'd switch to that language because they knew we didn't understand. But sometimes I could tell certain words, and I think that's something you pick up. And if Taipei is anything like my experience in Rome, in Italy, is the capital city. Even here, if you come to Nairobi, you don't really need to learn Swahili. If you're living in Nairobi, people speak English. When I was in Rome, people spoke English. I lived in Rome for about a year and a half before I went to Turin for my postgrad. When I went to Turin is when I picked up the Italian, because nobody was speaking English. Like you go to the stores, you walk around, my course was in Italian. So living it actually gets you to learn it. Even though in Rome I had taken some courses, I knew some people, but everyone's speaking English, so why even learn it? It's just not a practical thing to actually do.
Yeah.
That is true. And I'm very big on conserving time and using it efficiently. And that is an aspect of it. In Taipei, definitely. I'm like, I can get by with my poor Chinese. For me, I remember words, it's the tones. If you're familiar with Chinese, it's the tone that I have a lot of trouble with. And I figure people in context will work with me to understand what I'm saying. That's not the reality of the situation at all. But it's the tones that really screw me. But I was in Italy for a month. I had no trouble just making it work. But even then, most people speak enough English, and all I really want is food. So,
the chibo.
I'm just eating my way through the country, so it's not difficult.
If you speak of food, then you should definitely come on for the Dish on Dish series as well, where you just talk about food. You can pick some restaurants, take some photos, and tell us about the different restaurants there.
That'd be really fun.
Jaclynn has some good posts. Like she went to a cocktail place, and you're a vegetarian though, you said, right? So
I'm a pescatarian, and I know that makes you angry deep in your soul, but my friends are not, and I don't care what other people eat. From you know what I mean? Like I'm not judging people. I don't care.
Yeah.
But if I were in Hawaii, I would probably eat some meat. It's an ethical thing with how animals are treated. It's not we should be eating meat. Like it's it's the ethics of it. And in Hawaii, people hunt wild boar, and I'm like, give me some, But cook it underground in an imu for 3 days. That's melts off the bone. That's incredible.
Cool.
No problem there. But I'm not going to go in to a restaurant and order pork, knowing where it comes from. But there's so many great restaurants, in Taiwan. That'd be amazing. I could go with meat eaters and take photos of meat for you.
It could be anything. It's dealer's choice on that one.
Okay, cool.
All right. So if you're ready, I think we can move on to the next part, the next question. It's been a lot in the first one. Okay, so what are 2 or 3 things someone would like about what you do? And that's both studying abroad and also teaching abroad, or just what you think. What are 2 to 3 things that you think might stick out more that people may not be aware of?
I feel like I have a lot of flexibility with both those things, with my work and with my studying. I feel like I have a lot of flexibility in the programs I teach and I'm a student in to kind of do what I want. To be honest, as a university lecturer, there's really not anyone breathing over my shoulder. because I'm a lecturer, I'm not a professor. I'm not an assistant professor, associate professor, nothing like that. I'm a lecturer, and people really give me the freedom to do what I want in my class, which is quite nice. I appreciate that. I sort of had the same thing when I was teaching at the international school for high school, the flexibility to sort of incorporate what I want. I don't think that I would have that flexibility if I were still in the US, and I think I would be coerced to teach or behave in certain ways that I wouldn't agree with. Okay. Looking at what's happening in North America with the education system, there are a lot of things that I don't agree with. So luckily, because I'm abroad, specifically in Asia, I don't have to deal with those things. Okay. Did have to deal with a few of those things at the American university that I was a student at, but I've switched to a European university where that's no longer an issue. The woke factor has dropped. So, and there's zero woke factor in universities in Asia. So yeah, flexibility is great. I appreciate that a lot. I find, being in a box very stifling. I like to be able to kind of be flexible. Okay. Something else that people might like about what I do. Pre-COVID, I was traveling around the world. I was probably taking international trips. I would go in a year between 8 to 10 countries. Okay, wow. On average. Obviously that's not happening now, but I'm hoping it happens again at some point. It'd be nice just to go home, but haven't been home in 2 years. But yeah, that was something that was really nice. The ability to travel, getting entire summers off, getting a month off right after Christmas, and ticket prices, completely dropped. Being able to travel so easily, and it was so inexpensive. Something I missed, and that was great.
Yeah, what would be the differences that you think if you said you're a lecturer, not a professor? What do you think the restraints would be if you were a professor?
I think that there's definitely people watching you, right? Especially because it's a hierarchy. You start out as a assistant professor, and then associate, and then you're tenured and you're a professor. Yeah. So you really have to watch your step and watch what you do. There's a criteria that's quite strict for the amount of publications that you have to do per year. And a lot of those have to be, international and highly ranked. There's just a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, which maybe I'll get to one day, but for now, I don't have that on me, which is nice.
Cool.
Any questions, Stephen?
No, I think that covers it.
And you'd mentioned, what is the cost of living in Taiwan compared to, I guess, in Taipei, compared to a relative city what city would you compare Taipei to in the United States of America for people who need if there is a possibility to do that? Like
I don't even know. I'm from rural Hawaii. I don't.
Yeah,
that's a hard one.
Cost of living, things.
Because I was gonna say here, it's like, New York's one of the most expensive. San Fran is up there. Then it's like, I'm trying to think, but then it's like if you go to like some of these like cities like St. Louis, it's like way cheaper. Atlanta's a lot cheaper, but I don't know how that compares to.
Yeah.
Well, I know Honolulu is actually, it might be the most expensive city in the U.S. Honolulu.
I think I've heard.
Yeah. Hawaii is incredibly expensive. Let's see. When I first moved here, it was really cheap, and you could buy a home, an apartment, and it was quite reasonably priced. But over the course of the past 12 or 13 years, it's skyrocketed. A lot of that has been a soft power move by our friends in China who are coming in and buying up real estate. So the prices have skyrocketed. There's no way you could buy something within Taipei. There's an adjoining city called New Taipei. On the outskirts of that, you might be able to buy a flat. It might be a fixer-upper. Let's see. I live kind of downtown in a touristy part of town, so it's quite apartment, and I pay about $1,000 US a month. I don't know if that's good or bad.
So to put it into perspective, Well, so to
Sorry.
put it into perspective, no, you were talking. To put it into perspective, I actually live in a rooming house, so my rent's really cheap. I actually pay $700 a month, which is like practically free. A studio around here probably starts at minimum 2,100. It's usually more than that. I mean,
Wow.
if you live in one of the outer boroughs, you could maybe pay like $2,000 or less with roommates, but it's like obviously you're further from Manhattan. I mean,
Yeah.
you could live obviously way out there and pay less, but then it's like it's going to take you 2 hours to get to the city. Like I know someone currently who lives at Coney Island. I knew someone who did live there, and their rent is cheap, and they had a good place. But it's like it takes 2 hours to get into Manhattan proper, and it's like you might as well live like Westchester or somewhere else at that point.
Wow. Yeah, there's cheaper places to live. Definitely.
Yeah.
I live in a nice building. There's a guard. There's a rooftop. It's a nice place. There's definitely cheaper places to live. The place I was at previous to this was a fancy studio. It was about half the price, but I wanted more space. There's cheaper options. A lot of people live with roommates and they pay much less, but I'm not a roommate kind of person. So
sure.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I think the cost of living is I save. I mean, I save a lot. A lot. And I think the cost of living is quite acceptable. Like you'd pay a lot more in Japan, you'd pay way more in South Korea if you were in a city. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, because we talked a bit about it in the other video, but I was saying how like I live in a closet, but my rent is so cheap and it's right near Times Square. So, but that's why like I've saved a ton of money. Whereas if I get like a good studio, it'd be nice, but it's like the place wouldn't be that much bigger, and how much would I be paying? Or same as I just described, I'd have to live way far away, and it's like, do I really want to take like an hour plus to get to Manhattan? It's not really worth it.
Yeah,
I checked the map, and it seems to be kind of a nice geographic area. I've seen some pictures of my friend post. I haven't seen too much else about it, but big river coming in, seems to be right on a landmass. Like there's a lot of beach or ocean by there. It seems like it'd be a good place, like an interesting place. At least my friend seems to take regular trips hiking or out to the nature.
It's gorgeous photos. Yeah, she always posts gorgeous photos. The mutual friend that we know, she's always having fun. I'm always inside typing away. Taipei's lovely. What's great about it is that it's surrounded by mountains. Well, that's not lovely. It makes it humid as heck. We have to breathe. It's so humid. But it's surrounded by mountains. And even though it's a big city, there's, I think, 4 million people. All of Taiwan, about 23 million.
Yeah.
So for you guys, I mean, especially from New York, it's like nothing. But so about 4 million people here, but it's so easy. I could hop on the metro, I could get on the train, and I could be hiking and in the forest in 10 minutes. I mean, it's cool. Nature is everywhere. Nature's everywhere, even within the city. People here are really into being outdoors. People are really into being active, especially the elderly community, which is amazing. Yeah. I mean, every evening or very early in the morning, they're in the park exercising, doing Tai Chi, doing like choreographed dancing. It is incredible. I that's part of why people live so long, I think. There's a purpose, exercise, and there's community, and it's really nice to see. Taiwan excels at waterfalls and rivers and forests. The beaches are not very nice. I am very biased. I'm from the place that has the nicest beaches. So I'm like, but the nature here is spectacular. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think I had considered that sometime with our mutual friend when she had gone first, about going. A lot of people do the whole go teach in Asia for some time, for a year, then you save up because cost of living is not as high compared to your salary. Then they move back to the States or move back to wherever. So that's an option, and it seems to be something that has rang true. But my friend decided to do it, and she's been in Taiwan for multiple years now, a lot longer than initial kind of thing. But I don't think she was doing it. She used to save and move back. But yeah.
I had only planned to be here for a couple of years, and it sucks you in. It really does. I mean, you can ask any expat here. They're like, I'm going to come for a year and it's been 6. I'm like, yep, that's extremely easy to have a good life here. And I have had a good life here. I mean, I've had a good life. It's just gotten better as the years have gone by. It's easy to have a good life. People here are genuinely nice. It's incredibly safe, very, very safe. Unfortunately, the coming, making money, teaching in Asia, in Taiwan, not so much anymore. The cost of living has gone up, and there's been no pay increases in the past 20 years. So for a lot of people who aren't licensed educators who just show up and they're like, oh, I'm going to teach at a cram school, whatever. I mean, you can, but it's not the same that it was 10 years ago. It's not. You can definitely go to other parts of Asia, and I think you can still do that. China, I think they're cracking down now on Westerners, Western influence, cram schools, what kids are being exposed to. So I don't think that any longer will be a place, unless you're teaching at a, totally confined international school. I don't think China will be much longer a place to go to.
I'd seen that on it was ADV podcast and Serpentas and Laui 86. They lived in China and taught there, and they do this thing traveling around. And they were talking about, like in mainland Taiwan, they're really cracking down, and that's going to create a lot of competition, because a lot of those people who are teaching there now will come to Taiwan or will move to other parts in Asia. So that's going to it's going to have an effect on, I think, the teaching market for the next couple of years, probably.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that sad note, I think we can move to the next.
It's fine. I have a teaching license. I'm good.
Okay. on to the next one. So, what are 2 to 3 things that you think somebody might dislike about what you do? Like, as in, they might think, okay, this is for me, I'm going to go, and they'll come there and be very surprised, and something that maybe you also hadn't really considered when you got there, you got over, or things that you've seen people who were excited to come there, and that was the kind of thing that made them say, okay, no mas, I have to go back.
Let's see. For a lot of people, even if they learn Chinese and they completely integrate themselves into the culture, I think if you're a foreigner, you're still always going to be seen that way as an outsider. I did not do the integration thing, but for a lot of friends of mine who are like, I've been here for 20 years, I have a Taiwanese partner and our kids, and I speak fluent Chinese, they're always Waigoran. They're always the foreigner. They're always not completely accepted. Unfortunately, I think that's just the way it is in Taiwan. I don't think that that's going to change. I find that in education and as a student, there's a lot of rigidness with how things are done, and there's not a lot of thinking outside the box. I think that is a cultural thing. If you look at Chinese history and you look at the way education was for a very long time, it was purely memorization.
Yeah.
You can get this post if you go ahead and you memorize these 10 scrolls, and that's it. Like, that's your intelligence test. We're good. I find a lot of that is still very much part of the education system. I mean, obviously more in Taiwanese sides of education, but it's very much a 50 kids in a class. So, there's absolutely no personalized interaction with the teacher. There's no way you're writing essays. That's hilarious. There's no, every piece of homework you do, every test you do is a bubble in.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow.
This isn't through programs I've taught, but that's what's on the Taiwanese side. If you're learning English in the classroom setting like that and you're never speaking, what are you doing? I mean, it's a joke. It's really still about just memorizing, moving on, memorizing, moving on, memorizing, moving on. And that definitely comes into play when I was a student here. Like, I have a question, I'm going to challenge something that you're saying. No, that didn't go very well. I had a very frustrating experience as a graduate student. Dealing with that cultural aspect of, we're not taught to think outside of the box. We're not taught to, I go into the bank and I'm like, okay, well, I need this done. Oh, well, we're going to do it this way. Well, why don't you do it that way? Because it'll save us all time and money and effort. Oh, no, I have to do it this way. And that's sort of just how things go in Taiwan. And it was a constant source of frustration and rage until I just went, no, that's just how it is. That's just how it is. And with students as well, because when they come into my classroom, the expectation is, hey, this might not even be test-based, probably not going to have any tests. you're going to have to do creative writing. You're going to have to write essays that are not plagiarized. Oh, that's a big one. They just kind of look shocked. Hey, we're going to have conversations, like non-scripted conversations. Explode, you know? So it can be quite frustrating as a teacher, and especially if you're a new teacher coming over, you're like, why are they not talking to me? Why am I giving them the most basic assignment? Write a paragraph about your weekend, and every paragraph looks exactly the same. You know, things like that. So that's very frustrating.
I had a few points I was going to make to bring it back to the Koreans, and you were talking about not integrating. I always thought it was interesting the dynamic of Koreans versus Korean Americans. How even the Korean Americans, their parents were from there, they spoke the language. The Koreans still view them as outsiders because they're like, you grew up in the U.S., you're not one of us. Like that's how they viewed them. I feel there's probably kind of a similar vibe there. And then with the with getting back to the whole hierarchy thing, I saw that a lot with them where if you did something wrong, one of like the underlings would correct you because they saw it as it's better I say something because if I don't, you'll get in trouble with the person in charge, and that's much worse. Whereas like I saw that as kind of annoying because I'm like, you're not my boss, why are you telling me what to do? But they saw it as, well, I'm doing you a favor because if I don't say something, the boss is going to see this and get mad. That dynamic was a little tough to get used to at first.
Yeah, the dynamic with bosses being sort of oh, it's boss, and I'm like, no, I can't do that. Like I can't. I don't have it in me, right? It's too American. Like, I don't care. I have a big problem with authority. That's a negative about me. Yeah, I really do. And so in Asia, that's really compounded because there's very much like the boss is up here, right? Whereas I think where we grew up, it was a little bit more equal. So
I think I can relate to that a bit from having had a lot of my schooling in the United States of America and living in other places, especially here in Kenya. And I think I have respect for authority, but authority is something that's earned and something that somebody shows by their actions. I have no respect for seniority because I remember when I first came back to Kenya after being gone for 17 years, and we were in the village in the tribal area where my parents grew up, and my dad was sitting with a couple of the wazés, which are the older men, just sitting there, and that's the point of position. You could tell the general vibe in the place. These are the respected elders. My dad's introducing me to them because he grew up with them. He still has that. And I mean, I went there, I was polite and introduced myself, but I just thought that there's like 10-year-olds living in the United States of America who have more valid information about things that affect me in my life than these 80-year-old men. So I could respect them as human beings, but that whole deferral to say, I'm going to respect this person from that old traditional way where if you lived in the village and somebody's managed to live in that village for 80 years, they'll probably know a lot more about living there than you would. But once the world expands, that whole aspect of just respecting somebody because they're older and live in the same area that you do kind of gets holes poked into it, where it's not necessarily as valid an authority figure from just living there, from just basically existing. And I think that's one of the issues of the woke system, which is almost like a horseshoe. It's on this end, we're talking about automatons, this you're competent, but you're not creative. And then on the other end of the woke system, they want to break down all those things of authority as well. And just you can be anything. There's no actual solid thing. And both those situations are anti-American in my estimation of what I think it is to kind of be creative and to allow people to come in, allow people to go out, change things in and out. But that's not something that really happens in too many other cultures. And I think a lot of Americans don't really appreciate how exceptional it is in the United States of America with that.
Well, because I was going to say too, like with the Koreans, I know they do this thing where like if you were to share a bottle with a bunch of Koreans, the youngest person is supposed to pour wine, and they start with the oldest person, then second oldest, and on down, and then you're supposed to let the oldest person drink first, then second oldest, and on down. And I think it's a similar thing with eating, where like the oldest person is supposed to eat first, they lead the meal, and then when they're done, that's when everyone can be cleared, and like there's things like that like. Here an American would just go and grab the wine and they would think that's rude, but like they have that very rigid, like this is how we do things.
Yeah. So are there any of these traditions or any of these kind of rote kind of set things that you appreciate more than like that you might not see the purpose so much, but you think, okay, that's actually kind of good?
No. Trying to think. No, that's not true. Actually, in Taiwan on the train, I don't know. I have no idea how it is in the rest of the world, actually, or at least in the rest of the U.S. They have sections for seats to be saved for like the elderly or pregnant people or people with injuries or things. And people are very aware of when elderly people come on and they give their seat to them, which I think is lovely. I think it's really, really nice. Like things like that, I think are really great. But then when I'm standing in line for the train and there's an old woman, knocking me over, cutting in line to get ahead of me because she's 70 and she should get on the train first. No, I want to smack her. But that doesn't happen so often. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, Stephen?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. So we'll move to the next question. The next one is, are there any occupations or pastimes that you might think are the opposite of what you do, where I guess you in there teaching in a different country, what do you think would be something that would be on the polar opposite kind of side? It's this question. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah, I had trouble. I couldn't come up with a good answer for mine either.
There might be some people who are doing
education. So the opposite of education. Oh gosh, that's a really hard one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really difficult. Let's see. I don't know. My life seems pretty polar opposite, a 180 from. I have friends in the U.S. who have never left the country.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's.
Well, if I lived in New York, I may never want to leave the country either.
I wanted to, but for me, it was like I was struggling financially for a while. I wasn't making. Now I'm in a good place, but things with COVID and everything. So it's like I do want to travel for sure, though. Yeah.
But if I lived in New York City, I don't know. I remember I grew up in the sticks. I grew up thousands of miles from anything. If I wanted to travel anywhere to go to LA, it was a 4 or 5 hour plane ride, right? I mean, just traveling inter island was extremely expensive because there's a monopoly there with airlines. So for me, it was really important to get out. Island fever, as they say. But if I was from New York, I mean, my stepmom's from Brooklyn. I don't know what she's doing. She's like, I never want to leave Hawaii. I'm like, what are you thinking? But maybe, opposite for her, living in a big city, she wants the quiet and the solitude. But yeah, if I lived in New York, I don't know if I have the same drive and desire to see the world, because New York's so exciting. Everything's there.
Well, the thing I would add too is that every area has provincial people like that. Like I remember we knew someone upstate where I'm from. I grew up about 2 hours north of the city, and we knew someone who's probably like in their early 50s now, and they had never come to New York City. And I remember my family member who knew them was really surprised. They're like, you grow up, you live 2 hours from this city, you've never been here. And then this person came and they're like, wow, I love this. I wish I had been here sooner. But it's like, that just really blew my mind, because I'm like, you live like 2 hours away from the city and people come from all over to be here, and you're not going to partake.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, but that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying. I feel like every small town has people like that just never leave that area.
But I mean, we didn't have a choice, because you drive off into the ocean, right? Like, I can't imagine North America and being like, can't be bothered. That's crazy. But I mean, it's something like 35% of Americans have passports, 35 to 40%. The rest of the
Sounds
U.S.
about right.
Doesn't have a passport. But I mean, think about it. North America, it's so huge. Like it's so big. There's so much to see. I think I've only been to 13 states. I've been to 37 countries, but I've only been to 13 states. It's just so big. There's so much to see. And before, you could drive into Canada like nobody's business. But I think the opposite, somebody who is the opposite of me, I'm not sure career-wise, but maybe like a parking lot preacher might be the opposite. I have a lot of friends or acquaintances or people that I know from high school who have maybe never left Hawaii, or maybe only gone a few times to what we call the mainland, which is, continental US. They settled down, they bought homes, they had a bunch of kids, and they just never left. And that would kind of be the 180 for me. I don't want to have children. I really don't want to settle down in one place. Not yet. Can't imagine where that would be. It probably won't be in Asia. But yeah, there's a lot of people back home that are a big 180.
Yeah.
I find in the US it's also a generational thing, because I find some of like my older family members have stayed in certain areas their whole lives, but especially back then it was different because women just stayed at home. So it was, you met a guy in your area, you married him, then it was you traveled if he wanted to go somewhere. So it's like there really wasn't the incentive to leave, whereas now with women in school and working, it's like, no, you have the opportunities to see those things. Plus, I mean, with the internet and everything, the world's just way more connected. Back then it's, yeah, I can hear about these places or read about them, but you're not going to know so much from maybe watching TV or reading a few things.
Yeah, this is also a question to the people out there, guys, gals, and everything else in between listening. If there's something that you think maybe you do, or you know somebody who does something who seems to be the opposite, let us know. Also, just let me know about that question. I should just boot it out.
If you're a parking lot preacher, I'm sorry I offended you with my comment.
Yeah, I think that's what I had. I think I had that in mind sometimes, where someone would have, you'd have this, then you'd mention parking lot preacher. Then if I know a parking lot preacher, I can have them on and then see if they think so this way you get this to connect to, you watch this video, then parking lot preacher comes up, click, go to the parking lot preacher, I talk with it. Yeah. It can be interesting that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question. Good?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So what are some misconceptions about what you do? And you've probably mentioned some already, but is there anything else that you can think of that?
I think people have a misconception of, at least in Taiwan, I think throughout Asia, people have misconceptions about teachers, because a lot of the people that come here aren't licensed teachers. Maybe they're just coming to, have a lot of experiences with locals, if that's the nicest way to put it, and drink and have fun and be irresponsible for a couple of years and then go back home. And I think, at least when I first moved here, that was definitely what I saw around me. I think it's changed quite a bit because, again, the cost of living has gone up. So you can't really live that lifestyle anymore. But I think there's definitely the idea that expats are lazy, especially expats who work in education. They're just lazy. They're unqualified. They're just hired because they're white or they fit a certain image of, what specifically Asian parents want in the classroom, which has always really annoyed me. People ask me, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a high school teacher. Oh, you're a teacher. I'm like, yeah, but I'm a licensed teacher and I make, 3 times what you do. And we're not all sitting outside of 7-Eleven, drinking and, being inappropriate on the streat. I definitely did that when I was in my 20s when I was here, but I was still gainfully employed and everything. But yeah, I think there's definitely the idea of like the gross backpacker. I added the word gross because I think they're gross. Having traveled all around Asia and seen them myself, like they do what's it called? The begging on the street. What's it called?
Panhandling.
Yeah, I've seen them in Taiwan even, and I'm like, no shame. Like that is outrageous that you would come here and do that. Because the perception is that Westerners are all wealthy.
Yeah.
Which of course isn't true, but it's really embarrassing. So I think there's that idea that expats are lazy or unqualified or we're taking advantage of the system rather than giving to that system and being a part of it. So yeah, that's definitely something that's annoyed me.
Yeah. I would be like, right here, click somewhere around here for the talk with the gross backpacker.
Hanging out next to the parking lot preacher.
Yeah.
So find them together.
If you're a gross backpacker, reach out. But yeah, I think that is something that I hope this series is part of the things that, just to go into the actual things, because a lot of the things people do, people have misconceptions of, and there's a lot of things if you just knew ahead of time, doesn't mean you would stop doing it, but you prepare yourself better for it, or you might come with different solutions, and I think is just a helpful thing. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
I think we as expats, we represent where we come from. And as I've gotten older, that's definitely something that's important to me. Is I don't think that I don't think that means I need to be inauthentic, but I think I need to keep in mind that I am a representative of where I come from, and I want to show it in the best light.
Sure.
So, yeah, I if all expats could do that, that'd be great. Americans have a reputation.
Like there was some of my time during when I was in school in Rome with a mutual friend. we'd be walking around Trastevere with a couple of other people, a bit in the cups, and we'd be like singing late at night. People would start yelling like, "Oh, Americano!" Like trying to like shut up. Then we'd be like, "Sono canadese." We tell them we're Canadian.
Oh, nice. Okay. I don't know. People in Rome were in their cups quite a bit.
Yes, yeah, especially in the.
Well, I wouldn't.
I mean, it's definitely more of a drinking culture than many places up in. Like you can drink in public. You can just go to like a piazza and just sit there with a bottle of wine or some beers, and it's just
as well. Yeah. There's no open canister law here, so you can. Yeah.
And at the same point, it's hard to see any actual. The people you would see plastered would be foreigners.
Yeah.
It's hard to see.
No. Okay.
I think they also start drinking a lot younger in general in Europe than they do in the United States.
Yeah, I heard that. Like my French teacher told us, like if you go to France, it's like American teenagers that are drunk because they're happy they can get alcohol easily, but like French kids are not wandering around drunk outside.
Yeah.
In general,
there was a meme like that I saw with it's like that Ben Affleck one where he's like kind of standing in front, like smoking cigarettes, like me in my 20s, like after just having a hangover, and then it's like that smaller one, it's like European 14 after having like 3 years, deciding he's going to quit drinking after 3 years of drinking. It's like a 14. Like, what? Might put it up on the screen if I remember that. Okay. Anything else?
No.
Misconceptions? Okay. So now, are there any other classes or forms of learning that specifically helped you to do what you do now? And are there any other things that you had the chance to in your past that you think if you had actually done that, that would have helped you more in what you're doing now? Bit controversial question.
Yeah. So both my parents are teachers. My dad was a teacher. My stepmom is still a teacher in Hawaii. So I think that kind of helped me a bit as far as getting interested in education and seeing what made a good teacher. So those experiences were really helpful growing up. I actually started out subbing for my parents. I was a substitute teacher in the state of Hawaii before I got my full license. But I am a licensed teacher. I did take a summer with one of my best friends. We went to Istanbul in Turkey, and we did a Cambridge CELTA. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're more useful in Europe. We were teaching in Europe, but it's an international ESL-focused teaching certification. And so it's quite expensive. It's 6 days a week. It's extremely intensive. It will make you cry. Grown men bursting tears. It is intense, but it's a really good certification to have. It looks really good. So I did go to Istanbul for a summer, and I did that. And so I have a lot of degrees. I have a lot of certifications. What I wish I had done was maybe studied up a bit more about Taiwanese history, Taiwanese culture, and the Taiwanese education system before I threw myself into Taiwan without a care or an idea of what I was doing. A little bit of background information would have been really helpful because I struggled the first few years, like, oh, they're not talking, they're not engaging, these tasks that I thought would be quite simple are really difficult. And it's not that they're not intelligent enough. It's just that their education system doesn't provide the framework of support for them to be able to do these things. So I should have done, I'm going to blame it on my youth. Sure, we'll do that. I'll blame everything on my youth. I was very young when I moved here, and so I didn't prepare enough. And I wish I had. I find it really interesting to delve into that stuff now, the cultural aspects, the history, to kind of see, how it is now. But I didn't do that coming here, and I wish I had.
I thought you were going to say a source of information. I thought you would say Megan Murphy's show. I know you're a big fan of hers.
I am, but maybe not for time, culture, and history.
And I think
Jaclynn also writes blogs via Medium. I don't know if you know Silas. I've shared a few of them, so if maybe we want to push those as well. I need to read the one about Spartan women. I still haven't read that one, but it looks pretty interesting.
I'm filling in the paperwork right now for an academic journal. So yeah,
cool.
Hopefully I'll get 2 of those in by the end of the year. And it's like, I love writing on Medium. It's a way for me to express myself and get out my ideas and be creative. But yeah, I really need the the academic published journal stuff to happen too, or people are just going to laugh at me. So that's happening.
Of course.
I think, like you mentioned before, using social media for being social, that's something that people can do now, that in the same way that people have passports, they have the ability to travel in America, but they don't. People have access to Facebook, and then they only talk to people they physically know. They could actually talk to a person, and they go, instead of going to talk to that person in person, they go online and just stalk them online. I'm like, what are you doing? But they can do things like that now. You can do that research where you can go online, just join some group of people in Taiwan and try to reach out and get some conversations with the people before you actually go there. Are there any particular sources that you think people who are looking to get into into teaching or to studying abroad that you would suggest, go check out these sources or find some people to talk to in these places?
I mean, if you went on Facebook and you just typed in Taiwan teachers, there's so many groups. And these groups have thousands of members, and they're quite helpful. If you're a woman specifically looking to move to Taiwan, there's a great group called Taipei Ladies, and that's specific to any issue that you might be having, not sex specific even, but that is addressed as well. But there's a lot of Facebook groups, and a lot of people post asking questions. How's it like to move to Taiwan? What's the pay like? And, it's a great source of information and experience.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll try to get some of those links from her, and we'll have those somewhere.
Yeah.
You could click somewhere on this, wherever you get it, if you're interested in that.
Definitely.
Anything else, like specifically, that you think, even if it wasn't directly in, like you mentioned with your dad, having the saving that has helped you also be able to save, because it's something that people can do. The travel, is there anything that's not necessarily in official education capacity that informed you that you think might be a characteristic of somebody that they could learn, or they could enrich before coming to do that?
I think it's helpful, and this I did on my own. This was just hard learning on my own. I think it's really helpful before you move abroad or maybe while you're doing that process, to travel as much as possible, to be exposed to as many different cultures and people as possible. It gets you really used to maneuvering around in a new environment. Do you wait for Silas?
So with part of this whole situation of being on multiple locations, one of the issues that we have here that I guess we could also go to ask Jaclynn is the power outage situation. In Nairobi, Kenya, it's a common thing. I'm living in a relatively good area of Nairobi, but it's still a fact of life to just have regular power outages. This is another developing country reality. It's not first world problems, developing country reality, because I know it could be a lot worse. But I think from having lived in the United States of America, where the first time I experienced a power outage there was the blizzard of '96 in like the Northeast. People were freaking out. I'm like, it's a common thing in Kenya. But, so we'd cut off when she was telling us about other things she'd learned that were not necessarily directly into education. So if you would sort of pick up from there,
Yeah, I think I was saying something about travel. I think that I've been pretty lucky. Oh, if you hear that weird noise, that is my cat scratching on her scratching post right below me. Sorry about that. Traveling really opened my eyes and gave me very good perspectives on the world. And I've lived for a short time in other parts of the world. I mean, I've been based here in Asia, but I've spent quite a bit of time traveling in the Middle East, in North Africa. I've actually spent time studying and living there for a short amount of time. I've been all over the world. And I think that really helps when you're an expat. I think it helps give you perspective. I think it helps you in dealing with situations with people from other cultures, it helps ground you. I think it's really important. I think that traveling all over really helped me be able to deal with a lot of situations that maybe might frustrate or enrage other people. And sometimes it frustrates and enrages me, but like inside. And I'm really good at just like keeping it there. But if of course the opportunity, it's not as though anyone can just get on a plane and travel around the world. And believe me, I was not staying at 5-star hotels. A lot of the time I spent a month in India with a friend with our backpacks. I mean, it wasn't, not all of this is fancy, not all of this is fabulous, but I think it really opened my eyes to the way other people live, to how lucky I am, how to deal with people from other cultures, how to get by when you don't know a language. I think it's really helped me as a person. So I would say, if you have that opportunity, take it.
Was that like a semi-gross backpacker, or was it
I'm not gross. And I was with a friend of mine who's a very posh gay man who always wanted to look nice. It's not just a gross heterosexual man.
Hey.
No offense, but yeah. So what was difficult about India was we were there in the winter. We were all in the north. We stayed in the north, all over the north. It was very, very cold, and there was a lack of hot water, meaning there wasn't any for that month. Basically, lukewarm was, I think, as warm as it got. And India has a lot of pollution. Just a lot. You blow your nose and it's black. Like there's just a lot of issues at play. So yeah, I felt dirty the whole time, and came back and was quite ill. But that's just how it goes in certain places. Like in Egypt as well. Luckily, I didn't have any issues in Egypt with water and contamination, but it definitely did in India. But yeah, it was a bit of a gross backpacker situation just because we tried really hard to stay clean, but it was a constant battle, and it's so cold, and the water is also cold, and you're like, how am I going to wash my hair? But yeah, it was a very interesting experience though.
Because people have told me about that in regards to traveling. Like I talked about how I didn't have a lot of money in my early and mid 20s, but then they were saying like, you don't have to spend that much money. It's just how you travel. Like you say, if you were to stay at all the nice places, you're going to spend a fortune, but it's like you could get by on a bargain if you know what you're doing and you go to certain places and all that. And
I do know what I'm doing now. I can plan a trip. A friend of mine right before COVID, or the year before COVID, we went to Jordan. It was a dream of mine to go to Jordan for history. And I planned that out. I budgeted, I spreadsheet. She was like, I don't care. You take the reins. I was like, this day, this hired car, we're going to go to this place. We're going to, I mean, it's fun. And I definitely enjoy doing those things. But in India, we stayed at a mid-range hotel next to the Taj Mahal, mid-range. It was $13 US a night. So,
wow.
I mean, to put it into perspective. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Cool.
Now, when I go to like Bali in Indonesia or Thailand, I'll pay a little bit extra to stay at a resort, like a fancy resort, and that's like $40 US. So even on my social media, people are like, "Wow, ooh, you're at a resort." I'm like, "Yeah, but you have no idea. I mean, I am paying next to nothing for this." Whereas, when I was in Scandinavia, I stayed at hostels, but hostels there are private rooms, right? But I mean, and that's like $150 a night.
Yeah.
Because it's Scandinavia. So it's, you just got to travel smart.
I mean, some of these hotels here, like Times Square, like I remember like a regular night at like the Marriott in Times Square is like $1,000 a night or something. And it's like, it's like and the thing is like, it's not that impressive of a hotel. It's just where it's located. Right. Like they have an interesting restaurant on top. Apparently the restaurant's revolving. I've never been up there, but but it's like, you're just paying for that location. Like if you book a room in Times Square on New Year's, it's like several thousand for the night, and you have to book like way in advance because people want to do. But again, it's a location. It's like there's nothing really special about the place besides that.
That's crazy.
That is one of the things that I do highly suggest. Now, if you go through the K through 12 system or whatnot, before you go to college, just put a year aside and do some work at some local place. So you'd work online or something and learn how to cook some basic food so you're not getting stuff like ordered from out, or if you're still living at home. And just saving up even $1,000, that can make you, living in the United States of America, you can travel to many places in the US that are very different from where you live. It's the United States, it's essentially different countries. Maybe even if you live in the city, go to a small town in the outskirts, you'll see a whole different sort of life before you have that experience of moving somewhere where you have to be there to live and have that extra stress. The ability to move and experience something new and know you have a home to go back to, I think could be positive to try before doing that first step where you go out there, and you might add more stress feeling you have to deal with certain things in certain ways. That if you have the ability to do that, I think it's a positive thing.
Sure.
Yeah, it's great advice.
And then you were doing that even, and also of course there's couchsurfing, which is a good site. A lot of people I met in Rome was through couchsurfing, because a lot of touristy areas people would be coming in, which is literally, hey, just sleep on the couch. It's like the pre-Airbnb. But now they have all these other ways of actually getting to know places. And I was living in Rome, and that's how I met other Romans, actually, from just going on couchsurfing and meeting people.
Yeah.
Because if you go to a 5-star hotel in Rome or in Nairobi or in Taipei or New York, it's pretty much the same thing. You're not really getting to know what the place is like. But when you go there, even if you want to sleep on that bed, when you're there, don't just go to the touristy places. Go on couchsurfing, go in those communities and try to actually integrate with the people who are actually living there. And I think it'll be more enriching of an experience if you try that.
I always say similar stuff about restaurants. Like, don't go to the cheap, well, not cheap, but like basic, like overpriced places by Times Square. It's like, it's basically food you can get anywhere. It's like, find it, like, talk to people like who've lived here, who like know like certain places, like that place Huertas we did a video of. Like, it's kind of off the beaten path, but really good food, well priced, and like things like that like maybe are a little bit underrated, but just don't have a certain press or attention, but like do a really good job. Like look out for things like that, because a lot of these other places are just hyped up, but it's just location and marketing. That's pretty much it.
That's what I try to Google actually when I go to new places. Is exactly what you just mentioned. Yeah.
Now, speaking about that, it's a good transition to the next and most important question. I made this whole program just to ask people this question.
Okay.
It's, do you like cheese? And if yes, which ones and why? And if no, why are you such a horrible person? I know you have some issues with it.
I remember I read the bottom and I was like, that's exactly it. Because if you don't like cheese, you're a monster.
Yes.
Like, you actually are a monster.
All my wives love cheese, by the way.
Yeah, that was that thing you said. Like,
I hope you gave background for this. The fact that you have many wives. I hope at some point you gave background on that.
Did I send you the thing? I sent it to Laura, but that thing about you may fascinate a woman by giving her a piece of cheese at the top of spells and incantations. But there's actually a scientific explanation. Like, there's some compound that's addictive in the brain, like to the brain, that if you eat cheese, you'll want to eat more of it. Yeah, I forgot. I should know the name of it, but yeah.
So which are some of your favorite cheeses? And also, we talked about this with Steven, that in Asian food, there's not too many cheeses in Asian cuisine.
No,
not at all. Not at all. No, because a lot of Asian people are dairy intolerant, lactose intolerant. The lack of cows, I guess, in a lot of places, they just are dairy animals. I think that's changing now, but there's definitely I go out of my way to buy cheese though. So
okay, so which are some of your favorites?
I love mozzarella.
Okay.
Like, obsessed. Like, I can eat it all every day. When I was in Rome, like buffalo mozzarella, like just like on everything, like can't stop. And I really didn't gain much weight. Like, it's true with the Mediterranean diet. Like, I was walking everywhere, of course.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really active when I'm on holiday. I'm just popping around. But I didn't really gain much weight. And it was like, here's an entire pizza that I'm not sharing, covered with mozzarella. And it was just so fresh. Oh, it's amazing. So I love mozzarella. I love brie.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You could put a whole block of brie in front of me and it's done. It's gone. Recently, I've discovered really good brands sold here at the sort of fancy international grocer. Feta. I never really enjoyed feta, but recently I've encountered some really good feta, and it's sort of changing my mind about feta, because I always sort of disliked blue cheese, feta, like the stinkier, stronger tasting cheeses, but now I'm kind of getting into them.
Yeah, for me, feta is my favorite salad cheese. If I'm gonna have
Oh,
a salad, I like just grinding it up and putting it in salad. So I really like it that way. And with like you said with Italy, uh, I don't know if I remember this when I was a kid. I don't think I remember. I think when I was a kid I remembered Baby Bell cheese, so it's like those circle ones. Then I
yeah.
went to Kenya, and then I lived in the United States of America for like 17 years before going to Italy. And I thought mozzarella was string cheese. And then I got to Italy and found what mozzarella really was. And I was like Arsenio Hall in that in that that Dave Chappelle skit. Like, why nobody tell me how good the cheese was? I was like, why did Americans try to convince me that mozzarella was string? Because I like string cheese, but compared to
Yeah,
buffalo
true.
mozzarella, it's something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
But
find
it's
it interesting that
oh,
I find an interesting dynamic between Europeans and Americans where Americans complain European cheeses are too strong, then Europeans complain American cheeses have no flavor. I think it's an interesting
yeah.
dynamic.
The Europeans
To
are
be
like,
honest, I haven't met a cheese that I don't like. There's
Wow.
cheeses that aren't high on my list, like the fetas and the blue cheese, but they're growing on me. But yeah, I just really cheese. Some of the English cheeses, the British cheeses, I've recently come into contact with, like different varieties, which I hadn't ever tried before, and those are amazing as well. Of course, I love cheddar. Yeah, I
Well,
feel like there's
I was
no
gonna
cheese
ask I was gonna ask which I was gonna ask which English cheeses because I mean there's like Stilton, which is blue. There's what's it?
It starts with a C. If you say it, then I'll be like, that's what it is.
What is it like a softer? Is it harder? Is it do you know?
Soft? Let me see. Can I look it up? English cheese.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is it?
like for me,
No,
like,
it's not there.
and then the upgrade, even the upgrade of buffalo mozzarella, the burrata.
Yeah.
Because in Italy, I was having that, and then eventually I got to Turin, and that was the first place I had burrata. It's like everywhere I moved in Europe, it's like upgraded my cheese experience.
It's reopening soon. There's a place by me. It's called Casa Lua. It's actually like a wine and cheese bar, but they feature cheeses, and you can actually do a cheese flight, and it's pretty cool. I had one a while ago, but I want to go back and record to get all the info on it. But it starts with like the lightest cheese goes to the heaviest one, and there's a condiment with each cheese, and you can also do a wine pairing with each cheese as well. So it's like I remember when I went there last time, I had like mocha marshmallows, fig jam, onion jam. There was star fruit. Like but like each cheese is paired with a condiment that matches it, and then you can do like a small pour of wine with each cheese, which is really interesting too. So I have to go back there soon. Yeah, that opens on the 14th. That opens again on the 14th, so I'll probably head back. It's actually a block up and over for me, so it's very convenient. I have to go back there.
Yeah. Oh my God, that sounds amazing. Yeah, Taiwan, cheese. You're not unless you go to a restaurant that is like owned and operated by a foreigner and they bring all the cheese in. It's super expensive to import. Yeah, you're not going to get good cheeses. I get them sometimes at the grocery store, right? But I definitely pay an arm and a leg for it. But cheese, I love it.
Yeah, so
definitely
I'll try to get that name of the cheese from her later, and that will be linked below and probably on the screen as well, because we used the clip from Casalua in the last talk because you mentioned it then too. Okay. We'll keep rolling that cheese, that beautiful cheese.
Yeah. I'll find it. I'll find the name.
Okay. All right. So now we've mentioned this before, and I also had now another question that you mentioned the grocery stores. Anything else to add to this? Like, what are the earnings, the cost benefit analysis, certain trade-offs, relationships? And I think you've gone over a lot of these in the conversation. It's been really good so far. I've been enjoying it. But one question in specific, this is something that happens with expats going to different places. For some people, they're very picky on their food. And even now, like you see when immigrants or refugees are coming to the United States of America, the Pentagon, people are saying, well, we made sure that when they arrived, they had culturally sensitive food. I'm like, they're leaving a war-torn country. I think they'd be okay with eating a cheeseburger or something. But food is very important to people, and that's why we have an entire series about that. So what is, in specific, if somebody's used to more of an American Western type of diet, how accessible is it to get those sorts of foods in Taiwan or in Taipei, along with anything else you want to add about this?
Sure. So when I first moved here in 2008, there were definitely nowhere near the amount of restaurants that catered more towards Western appetites. It was really difficult for me to find food that I wanted to eat. Again, I wish I had done a bit more traveling been a bit more worldly before I moved here, I would have made me less of a brat, to be honest. I hate that. So the first year that I lived here, I had a really hard time. A really hard time. I lost a bunch of weight. There was nothing that I found that I could eat. And it took me a while to sort of put myself out there and to be comfortable sort of going to night markets, checking out what food is available, going into restaurants, not being embarrassed because of my poor Chinese, being brave enough to sort of push myself to do those things. Not difficult now, I've traveled around, I have that experience. So I'll just walk into anywhere and just point it. But now in 2021, no problem at all. Okay. There are so many different restaurants. I'm always going to beautiful restaurants with friends. I went to a Moroccan restaurant Friday night, had wonderful tagine. It was delicious. It's no issue now to find restaurants to suit your taste in Taipei. You might pay a little bit more for Western food than you will for Taiwanese food, but it's not outrageous. So it's definitely easy to find things other than cheese.
Didn't you go to a Mexican place there? Because I remember you posting about that a while ago, and I commented on it. Yeah, I thought that was very interesting.
Yes, it's my friend Sophie, her restaurant, Teotihuacan. It is spectacular. It is the most authentic Mexican food in Taipei, maybe all of Taiwan. She lived in South America and all over the world. But yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing. I love Mexican food, so I'm so happy. That's one thing that was always quite difficult to find here. And I'm so happy that I can have good Mexican now.
There was one question that did come up. I think is a good question to ask. In what you do in the teaching kind of situation, you mentioned that the teacher-student relationship is very rigid, and that's how it is here in Kenya too. I was a part-time lecturer also at the university here, and the kind of cordiality or the kind of impersonal nature between teachers that I was used to in the United States of America does not exist here at all. Like this actual abject fear between the students and teachers, even at college level, and that really struck me back. But now, how is it within your colleagues? Like, is it somewhere, like we did mention, some people do go to travel to fraternize with the locals or things like that. But within your workplace, how many people, or is it capable to come there and then you meet somebody who you're working with and you can start a relationship, get a wife, or do you have time to socialize? And how is that actually, if somebody's interested in making relationships, friendships, and other relationships, how much does your job help that or hinder that in which different ways?
Okay, yeah, I think it's really easy. I mean, I'm friends with some of my colleagues. They're wonderful people. I think it's really easy to make friends. And my colleagues are from all over the world. They're not just American. I have a good friend who's a colleague who's Russian. So it's very easy to make friends. As far as, Taiwan, Asia in general is notorious for being a place that's very, very easy for men to have relationships, to get married, to do all of that. And for women, it's sort of like a desert, a wasteland. Very notorious for that. So I think if you are a single Western woman coming to Taiwan, it'll be very difficult to date.
Okay.
Not to make friendships, but it's a very difficult place for women to date. There's definitely a mentality here of foreigners are more interesting. Do you hear the cat?
Yeah. Hi, Truffles.
Oh man, she's really loud and annoying. Okay, go back to sleep. So she's done. Okay, no, she's not done. All right, so you may need to edit this part.
That's all right. That's all right.
She can come do a cameo.
Oh no, she's so annoying. The other one's over here looking at me like, how embarrassing. So Taiwan is notorious, Asia in general, for being a place that's very easy for men to come and date. I think there's definitely mentality of maybe not necessarily white, but foreign is I mean, definitely white. There's definitely that concept here that still exists. But being a foreigner has a higher status. And so it's very easy for, I think, for men coming to Asia to meet very beautiful women, and many of them, as opposed to Western women who may not have the personality to, or the ideal body shape or skin tone to necessarily fit into that same niche for Asian men. Now, I do know, of course, many, many mixed couples, Taiwanese husbands, Western wives, and vice versa. But it is notorious in Asia as a place that's sort of a wasteland, a desert for women for dating. All of the other foreign men are dating locals. Taiwanese men don't necessarily find the expat community appealing. Maybe it's not wanting to have children. Maybe it's being quite outspoken and having a strong, independent sort of attitude. There's different cultural aspects at play. So generally speaking, it's not a good place for a single woman to come. Yeah, that's not necessarily true for everyone that I've met. It hasn't been true for me. I've been in relationships basically the entire time I've lived here, but it's the stereotype, and I'd say it's fairly accurate. But friendships, romantic relationships as a woman would be difficult.
Yeah. There could be something in there where maybe some women might be more open to leaving with their partner if they meet someone, yet the men would find it harder to convince a woman to stay in Taiwan because maybe they're not as into the whole idea of, oh, I'm going to go to America, I'm going to go to Russia, I'm going to go to Belarus or whatever. If they fall for somebody who's from those places, maybe that could be part of it. I don't know. Also, with the pet situation, if you're going there to actually live for some time, can you bring your pet? Is it easy to get pets? Like, what's the pet situation in Taipei?
Sure. I found my very loud cats. I found them here in Taiwan. I think it was like 7 months into my stay here. I was inebriated and walking home at perhaps 3 a.m. And I was going down a little alley, and they were 3-week-old kittens, they're sisters. Someone had put them in a garbage bin.
Oh, no.
And luckily enough, I heard them, and I rescued them and thought, oh, I'll raise them for 3 months, and then I'll give them away. It's been 12 years, so clearly that didn't happen. They've been my companions. Quite difficult when I've been away for 3 months at a time traveling, but, I've made it work with friends and whatnot. Bringing an animal in, pretty easy. I mean, I think, you can Google that information online. I think it's a matter of getting their rabies shots and just making sure they have all of the documentation. I volunteer with an organization, Mary's Doggies. They nonprofit animal rescue, more focused on dogs though. And they send out animals all the time with volunteers who are taking direct flights to North America.
Okay.
To get them to forever homes, or sister organizations that take the dogs in. And it seems a pretty, straight process, making sure you just have this checked and they have all their shots, and not too difficult.
Anything else you're thinking, or questions you have, Stephen?
No, I mean, I think you covered a lot of good stuff. I don't think there's a whole lot else I really would ask about. It's funny. I remember you saying you didn't think you could speak for 2 hours, but I mean, it's been almost that. I mean, we did have an interruption, but I mean, pretty close.
Yeah. Okay.
A loud cat problem.
Okay. Yeah. So, any last kind of thoughts you have on any trade-offs or things that you feel maybe you feel you could have taken better advantage of if you had learned some things earlier, or things that you feel like, okay, this is done. Like, if you're going to do this, chances are you're not going to be able to do this other thing.
I think, like with what you're saying with trade-offs, sometimes I do wonder. I look at friends who live abroad, and I don't want to have kids, but I do think, wow, they have a home, and they're settled, and they have these material things that I don't possess. And sometimes I wonder, the social pressure, not that anyone's pressuring me, it's in my head, but the social pressure of, you're a certain age, you should be getting married, you should be buying a home. These are the things you should be doing. Sometimes I wonder if I should be doing those things. Should I go back Should I change my life completely? Should I go back and do those things? I think I'm making the right choice for me by being here. But, and you can definitely get married and buy a home when you're an expat. It's just a bit more difficult, you know, to do those things. But yeah, I don't really have any regrets. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I think I've learned so much from this adventure of living abroad. I don't think I would change that. I'm really glad that I've done this. I would like to live somewhere outside of Asia, maybe North Africa, the Middle East, in parts of Europe. I would definitely, parts of Europe that don't snow. I would definitely, I'd like to switch it up and experience that at some point. But yeah, I'm very grateful for the life that I have here.
Yeah.
That first point is interesting because I've had these considerations too. Like I remember my grandfather when he was alive, he used to always give me a time for not being married with kids because my mother's the oldest. My mother's the oldest out of 6, and he had her when he was 22. And I was like, looking back on my life, I would not want to have had a kid at 22. It would have been a disaster. And like having like, I think by the time he was my age, he already had 6 kids. I'm like, no, that I could not have done this. Like I would because also. It's not just, I mean, a wife who didn't work. I mean, that was normal, but I remember he made good money, but he was constantly worried about money and things like that. Plus, you know, watching each kid and each issue. I'm like I'm glad I didn't put myself through that. I would have been a disaster, honestly, looking back.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even feel ready to get a dog. Like I can't. That's too much. Cats are easy, you know, but a dog, no way.
Yeah.
Andrea talked about getting a skunk earlier. I was like, yeah, it doesn't really. Well, you know, they can cut out the scent gland.
Yeah.
But like one that's kind of messed up, and 2, I'm like, I don't know. It's just kind of a weird pet. I don't really, you know.
They're really cute.
I guess.
I was wanted a raccoon because I'm from a place that doesn't have raccoons. The little tiny hands. They look like, I don't know, like a panda and a cat and a baby. Like it's so cute.
I grew up.
Have you seen the red pandas?
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah.
They're so cute.
I think pandas themselves are kind of like a joke animal. Like they shouldn't exist. Like, but red pandas are cool.
Yeah.
I grew up around raccoons, so raccoons are like whatever to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have any interesting animals in Hawaii like that. So, you know.
What's like the squirrel equivalent? I guess there's some kind of fish. There's not land animals running around.
Yeah, we don't have monkeys. We don't have squirrels. We don't have snakes. What would be like a cute little thing?
Like some kind of
bird, probably. Some kind of bird.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this has gone really well. Like
awesome.
I think I've definitely learned a lot from it, like from the things that are in there. And I think one thing that's good to say, like I like that you mentioned that you do have regrets, because a lot of people say, "Oh, you live your life without regrets." And like, if you live your life without regrets, you're probably a pretty boring person. It means you haven't really you haven't really experienced different things. You haven't really had questions. Right. You haven't really exercised agency, because agency is like, you had the ability to choose something, and you chose one thing and had the ability to look back and see, if I had chosen that other thing, this other thing would have happened. If you're just somebody following directions, morbidly obedient, like you had mentioned, with the people who are not creative, they're just being taught and they're being told, follow this. Like, oh, why don't we try this? The person's like, no, we just follow what's written, and then we do it that way. That person has no regrets, because they can look back and say, I just did what I was told. I just did everything. Yeah. And I think knowing yourself and being able to try different things and looking back, you can have regrets, but it doesn't mean it has to drag you down. So I think that's a good thing. That's a good place to be in life.
Well, I mess up all the time, right? I mean, I'm, that's how we learn. That's how we build ourselves back up. Just, yeah.
So anything else to add, Stephen?
No, I figured we could go into the final questions.
Yeah. Okay. So now these are the last 3 questions. We haven't completely filled out. They're going to fill out more as we add more people to this whole project that we're doing. The first one here is, do you have any questions for us, just about the things that you talked, or things that you think we might have some interest in, or just, anything?
Stephen, what is the best and the worst thing about living in New York City?
It's a good question. So as far as best, I think it's as you said to yourself, there's just how much is here. I mean, I can get any type of food, everything's accessible. I can walk out, go to the Rite Aid, which is open 24/7 if I need something on the fly. All the different types of people I've met and all the opportunities because I came here originally to work in restaurants. So, you can cook any type of food you want. Where I'm from upstate, you'd have like 3 restaurants in your town to work in, something like that. As far as worse, I would say it's just a lot of it's the cost of living. It's the living standards compared to elsewhere. I mean, I guess for me, I've kind of gotten used to it because I was used to living on a little bit of money, and because I've lived here most of my adult life, so it's like I don't have much else to compare it to. But other people from other cities will tell you like, "Oh yeah, I could pay what you pay in rent, and I would have like a huge place." So it's like I do. There is that, but then you also think about it. But there's a lot less accessible nearby too. So again, it comes down to trade offs, but it's also it's sort of why you come here and what you want to do, because I think with a lot of people who want to work in restaurants or of course do acting, singing, whatever, it's a struggle at first, but the thing is if you make it, you could pretty much make it anywhere. It's one of those things where it's really tough early on, but the upside is a lot greater. Whereas if you move to a small town, you would have like a good sized house, a yard, all this like decent style of living, but there'd probably be a lot less upward mobility. So you have to weigh the ups and downs either way. That's how I'd say it.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah.
Silas, I wanted to know, when we're talking about education, what did you study in school?
My undergrad was in graphic design, and then I finished that up at that school in Rome, where it was a American school in Rome. So I finished my last semester there, transferred the credits back, got that undergrad, and then in turn, my postgrad was someone I met. She'd probably be someone else on this series as well. She's Malaysian, but she was an au pair in Rome. Met her through some online kind of thing. Then we became friends. And then she was going up to the Institute of European Design in Turin, and she told me about the place. So I applied for the postgraduate course in classical animation. So I went there, and that was more an intensive course, about a year and a half. Went up in Turin, and that's my education, just graphic design in the United States of America, and then concepts of animation. And now I just kind of been freelancing, doing design, doing different things. I still include art and things like that in the things that I'm doing, and looking forward to doing things like this with Stephen and a few other people who have some good projects in mind coming up that I'm sure I'll keep you abreast about, and everybody else who is listening to this. Yeah, it'll be good stuff. But yeah, I think that's part of why I was thinking I've had that experience of being in a postgrad course in Europe, and then trying to teach animation here, and thinking of the way I was teaching, I was learning in Europe and in the United States of America compared to the struggles that they have here. So I could really relate to what you were saying with the nature of students, of education in other places. I know America has some issues, the compulsory nature, of course, the wokeness, but there's still a reason majority of the world's people send their students to United States of America, because there's also a reason American institutions are going to other countries and starting things, because there's something in there. There's still a kernel of goodness in that whole system of having the creativity and having the openness and having that relationship with the teachers. So it's unfortunate seeing that being kind of stultified with the cancel culture work thing. You can get fired for just saying the wrong thing. It's don't go that way. Don't go that way, West. Like the West is the best so far. It's the best way that humans have figured out how to run society. There's things we can learn from other places and integrate those in, but the West is good because of adding those things and throwing out the bad, not because we need to stick to some kind of rigid kind of means of doing things. I don't know.
Well, I would add to what you say that like we discussed that in Cracks and Ivory Tower, but there are alternatives emerging too. I mean, homeschooling is big now. Praxis, which is an apprenticeship program, which is sort of like an alternative to college. Like you're seeing more things starting to emerge. So even with the system the way it is, there are good things. And I mean, they say the STEM fields are still doing well. Obviously, a lot of issues in the humanities, as you know, but like there are starting to emerge alternatives as well. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see more and more things like that. And then the system's either going to have to reform or go under because it's just going to be obsolete. Yeah. Like I don't see Harvard going under, but it's like if they get hurt enough, it's like they're going to have to say, okay, look, we have to do something, because there was that study showing a lot of the professors were sort of losing faith in the future of the school because it's become about wokeness. It's become about all this affirmative action, all these legacy hires. Like it's water. Like people have figured out how corrupt it is basically. So it's like it's like, even if you have the Harvard name, it's like people are going to ask, well, wait a minute, did you get in because you're connected? Did you get in because of affirmative action? What did you study? Like, all that sort of cheapens the brand. And the people who work there, of course, don't want that, because it's like they want to be seen as one of the best. So I think there's going to be more pushback too. Like Peter Boghossian quit recently. You probably saw.
Yes, Portland State. Yeah. It was very sad to hear about that.
Yeah, with that in mind, how I think you had mentioned a bit of how you found out about the school, found out about those programs, because that's a key thing. How will people who want to learn be able to find locations to learn? And I mean, this I know great people. Hopefully, is part of it. Like it's not, it's not even close to a full course, but I'm just trying to add more information of people finding out what you want to do. Because when I was teaching, one of the things I thought of was, they say those who can't teach. That's another thing based off of the current schooling system, schooling indoctrination complex. But historically, it was those who can teach. It was an apprenticeship, and you'd go and learn by watching the people who are actually doing the actual actions. And now you have a system where people are just in the place, but they have no application. Just like you're saying, yes, you could just write a blog, but you need that academic rigor to actually do that, because you feel that that's how to show that you can actually do what you're talking about. But now so many people are just kind of in there just to be in there. And I think it's a government program now. It's been mutated by the state, the way the things work, the incentives there are not really there. The whole aspect of, I think I've been hearing more talk of tenure being a thing that they might question the ability to enter tenure, or maybe once you enter tenure, it's like a 10-year thing. Then up to 10 years, they can review it again, because you have a system where it just doesn't work as well as I think it can. It's doing an injustice to the people who can actually learn from these things.
Well, we talked about that in the Cracks in the Ivory Tower series as well, where they've shown that people will put out a lot of articles and things when they're working to get tenure, and then they get it and they just drop off because it's like, oh, good, I'm safe now, and and just like and that, but then that's what happens. But then they make the point of like, well, what's the point in doing that? Because it's like you're supposed to be held accountable. Like, I just thought of my own career background. Like, if you were a chef who put out a bunch of great meals, great, but then it's like, oh, we're not going to fire you after this. It's like, well, you're going to get people slacking off because there's no incentive to keep doing a good job. But like you say, if sorry, what's it?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, what I was saying is that like there has to be that incentive. Like, I mean, there should be rewards, but there also has to be that consequence. Because if there's no consequence, like I think tenure, you only get fired if you like commit a felony, or there's like a few other like something. Like there's a few like you have to do something really bad for them to get rid of you.
Yeah. But even I'm sure you've read about the hoax papers that have been put out by academics who are just tired of this, right? I mean, I feel like there's not even in North America, I feel like you can write anything as long as if the emphasis is on being as academically full of jargon and incomprehensible as possible. Think Judith Butler. Does it make sense when you read it? Is it accessible? No. Is it the most asinine, ridiculous, unrelatable topic? Yes. That's what they're aiming for, right? And then it'll get published just because it fits into that particular postmodernist niche that they're looking to fill. So it doesn't even serve any purpose. Like, you got to get published, but you wrote the most ridiculous, asinine article I've ever attempted to read that serves no purpose. A lot of it is grievance studies, right? So there's no point to it other than to stir the pot, make people angry. There's no conclusion. There's no, this is what we need to do going forward. There's no solution. A lot of it is, that's what I'm seeing a lot of in academia, not necessarily where I am in the world, but what's coming out of North America. And it makes it seem to me very pointless because you're doing this for tenure, but it's not even accomplishing anything. It's not showing me that you're knowledgeable. It's not showing me that you've done research, that,
Your girl, Megan Murphy, said the exact same thing when she spoke to James Lindsay, basically how that's why she quit, because she's like, I'm just writing these journals that get read by other academics, and I tell them what they want to hear. They agree with me. Nobody reads it outside of the circle. And it's like, it's not really having any impact or anything. And when I ask people, like, what do you want to accomplish? They give me these vague answers about like fighting racism, fighting sexism. It's like, there's nothing concrete here. It's just kind of like jargon ideas that get read by the same people and in the same circles.
To be fair, I'm working really hard right now on getting published, but it's not jargon. And it's stuff that I'm really genuinely interested in, but no one's going to read it. I mean, I spent the summer kicking my butt to finish this piece, no one's going to read it. I'm doing it because I have to, right? Because it's this academic expectation that as a PhD student, I need to be getting published. I'm doing a conference where I'm a speaker in October. No one cares. Like, no one out of this little circle cares, but at least I'm lucky enough that I can write about things that interest me. In North America, I would probably be forced to write in a way that I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah.
Luckily, because I'm in Asia, I don't have to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think about all this work I'm putting out. And I'm like, what is this for? It's just ticking boxes, though.
But the thing is, I think in academia, this has been the case to a point, because I remember that joke about Kant, Hegel, and Marx, like how convoluted they wrote. And then our friend Edward said, like, in Germany in that, like, the 19th century, to be taken seriously, you were supposed to write like that. So that's why, like, there's that joke with Kant, how, like, no two people agree on what he meant. And, like, Hegel, there's, like, all these different interpretations, and it's like one offshoot became the Marxists, the other became like nationalists, which became Nazis. And it's like, and then reading it in the original German too, it's just like, but like, so it's like, I think this sort of theme has existed for some time. It's just, it's different now because of the climate in academia, and plus way more people going in academia. So that's going to change the dynamic too. Yeah.
I think there's definitely something there, but if you're doing something like this is the misconception I think people had about the historical college. They thought, oh, people who went to college seem to earn more, so going to college means you earn more. It's like, no, people happen to earn first, and then they could afford to go to college. So if you're doing something and you're paying your way through there, you're not racking up debts, that small niche of people is still somebody who's listening to what you're doing. There's still a demand there. And even if you're doing something with leisure time, like I don't say, oh, somebody spent $3,000 on a computer and they spend 10 hours a day. If they're paying for it and it's them and their little guild enjoying this game, that's still some value added to their lives and the world in extent, by them just being happier and more fulfilled in their life when they interact with other people that are doing positive things. So in my estimation, the negative part of it is people going in just to be credentialized. People going in and see reports, like a recent report from, I think, ABC was talking about here in Kenya, there's people who farm out cheating for students. Like American students one person gets a computer here, they put it on this clandestine website, people submit papers in, term papers, then he farms those out to multiple different Kenyan people and pays them like $5 a paper and things like that to write like a 20-page paper. Those papers get to the United States of America, and the teachers are like, you don't, like, I know you personally, you don't speak like this. So the students are telling them to dumb down, to tell the Kenyans to dumb down the English in order to actually pass as work that they're doing. Now, if you're going through that kind of process, why do that? If you're going to college to have fun, don't go to college. Take a year off, save up some money, travel around the world, do that thing, then come back and go and actually learn actual content, actual information, actual rigorous work, or get a job. I think that's a better way to kind of do things. And what are suggestions that you think might make the field that you're in more appealing to people, to get people to join, that maybe you didn't see until you were in it, that you think would be a good sell or would be something to add or to increase?
You mean for as a student or as a employee?
Either or. Like just so some things you think might be good to sell education or to improve certain things that you see that are rather straightforward.
I really think that education needs to be more accessible financially in the U.S. That's why I left. I mean, that's really why I left. I obviously, there needs to be fees. There should be, but it's just completely ridiculous, the amount of money. It puts people in so much debt, and I really don't think it's worth it. Mm-hmm. I don't find value in it, which is why I switched programs. Well, one of the reasons I switched programs. Unfortunately, in Taiwan, the position that I have as a university lecturer does not pay very well. Okay. The reason I switched is because I was working full-time and absolutely destroying my mental and physical health. I was very, very ill, trying to balance doing a PhD part-time and working full-time. So I've switched to part-time so I can actually get things done and focus on my health and myself a little bit more. But it would be nice if in Asia, these positions, which require quite a high level of education, were paid a bit better, especially considering we're given a blank slate and we have to design our own curriculum, our own lesson plans. I, for example, was not given a book or any material. So for my classes, I'm really creating everything on my own. And it would be nice if, we were paid a bit more to sort of reflect that.
Yeah.
But I'll live. But it would be nice. It would be nice if, the pay was a bit more on par with the requirements.
Are you allowed to own the things, or is that property of the school once you've created
No,
it?
they're mine. They're mine.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. This is a similar thing. When I was lecturing, I had to develop the entire thing and actually have a blog, have that stuff online. I want to and I think that's some of the things. If you're considering if there's certain schools in the United States of America that you feel ideologically might not be fit, you can look into getting that similar education in another country. Another thing you can do money-wise, go to a community college or just go to a local school. And a lot of big institutions like the MITs, Harvard now have their course content online. And now some of the things, of course, are a lot harder to learn if you're just learning by yourself. But I think there's better ways. There's more ways to actually get that. You can listen in on lectures. Like one of the most amazing things is the Sapolsky lectures by Robert Sapolsky on human behavioral psychology. I don't know if any of you have seen that. He's from Stanford. It's 15 years old, but it's just an excellent 26 series, and you can just see how into it he is. And those are the kind of teachers that I think are. That's what I was saying that at the start. That whole forcing compulsory education. If somebody's really into what they're doing and they really like it, it's in there. You can tell. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
So I don't know. I think we're down towards the end. Just more questions, but this like I'm saying, these are some ones that we'll fill out. But this last one, do you have any questions for anyone else, about the questionnaire, or anyone who's been listening to this that you think you might be able to field, or just questions about this whole process?
Yeah, I want to go eat cheese now.
Okay. Okay. So, do you have any particular questions? Let's say we find some some gross backpacker, or if we find someone else, you'd be interested to have in this series, or you'd be interested in hearing things about them, or anything like that.
You mean what kind of jobs? Like what?
Yeah, just anyone, new jobs or hobbies or just things like that for other people who might participate in the project. Because
I think it would be really interesting for you guys to interview, I think it's called bag packers. Like they travel around the world begging.
Okay.
And they're backpackers, like that sort of thing, or somebody who, travels all around living off their backpack with like $5 to their name. I'm always very intrigued by how that's possible. Maybe not during COVID times. Maybe it would be difficult to find that person, but I think it would be interesting. I also think that religiously motivated people, because I'm not religious, I always find them very intriguing as well, like missionaries who traveled abroad and, go to other countries. We have quite a few in Taiwan. I'm always very curious about how that works. Do they involve themselves in the culture? Do they distance themselves? Like how? It's just so different from my own life experience that,
Our friend Edward was a Mormon missionary for a while. I mean, he's not anymore. He fell out. But I thought it'd be interesting to talk to him about that. Just
it's so different, right? Most people don't know much about it.
Yeah. So the last one is a random question, but that question asks part of those random questions. We haven't built those up yet, but so all the people that we named, if we found a bagpacker and if we found a missionary or someone Christian wise or religious wise in general, any religion, that will be somewhere where you can find those links somewhere below. As this builds up, we'll find that person. Sure. But otherwise, this has been amazing. Really. I've been thinking about doing this project for a while. Stephen was the first one on, and then someone Stephen met is the second person on. So I'm really thankful for you taking your time to do this.
Thank you.
I'm very honored that you would think to invite me. This is great, and you're both such wonderful gentlemen, and it's so cool to talk to you in different parts of the world. And this is amazing. Thank you.
So I think that's it for me. I'm going to pencil you in that she'll be back with other things that she's mentioned. She's hinted at some things.
She's name.
She's a multifaceted person, so we'll have her back on for other series, and she'll probably come on the Dishing on Dish series, talk about food. So I'm really glad to have met one of Stephen's many wives. On that later. Anything you want to say, Stephen?
I really hope, Stephen, you've given backstory on that at some point.
Maybe we'll do a video of me just explaining that story. Yeah. But yes, thank you. Thanks a lot, Jaclynn, thanks a lot for coming on. It was nice to finally speak directly or as close as we can. And also thank you both for working with me with the time zone. I mean, I try to be flexible. I know you're very busy, and I know you had to wake up very early. So thanks for being willing to accommodate. It helps a lot.
Thank you, guys. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, great. Sure. All right.
That's it for me, guys, gals, and everything else in between. Thank you very much. There'll be more in this series. You can check them out wherever, somewhere around this. Goodbye. Thanks. Y'all stay on.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.